Good evening. My name is Emily Underwood. I'm with the Missouri Historical Society in our Community Engagement Division. And on behalf of MHS, I want to welcome you to STL History Live. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. Safety is a top priority for us, so nearly all of our programming is virtual right now, but the museum is open. You can visit on Wednesday through Sunday. There are a number of safety precautions in place, but we would love for you to visit if you feel safe doing so. Advanced reservations are required to visit any of the Missouri Historical Society locations, including the museum, Soldiers Memorial, and the Library and Research Center. And you can visit mohistory.org to plan your visit and get your free tickets. I do know that some of you watching this evening are members, and we want to extend a huge thank you to you. We are always so appreciative of your support and grateful for it. If you're not a member, we would love for you to consider joining today. I'm going to go ahead and post in a few minutes. I'll post a link for how to join in the chat box that you'll be able to find. And I also want to sincerely thank all of the residents of St. Louis City and County for your tax contributions through the Zoo Museum Tax District. We are so thrilled to host tonight's program, Black Pride. I want to thank our collaborator group, Black Pride St. Louis, who really organized the panel for us and did all of the work on that end. I want to give a special shout out to Randy Rafter for all the work he did. So thank you so much, Randy. We're very much looking forward to hearing the program tonight. But before we do that, I do want to quickly mention also that the Missouri Historical Society has a Gateway to Pride collecting initiative. And you can look at here on this slide that I'm sharing. We do want your help. We are actively collecting objects, archival materials, oral histories, anything to help us tell the story of the LGBTQIA+ community in St. Louis and that history. So you can see on the slide some of the types of objects and things that we are collecting and the stories we want to tell. And if you want to learn more about that or inquire about a possible donation, you can see the email that's listed, gatewaytopride@mohistory.org. So please feel free to contact us there. And some of those objects may also contribute in the future to an upcoming virtual exhibit. So we're very excited about all the possibilities there. So let's go ahead and get to the program. I would love to introduce you to Dr. Jeffrey McCune Jr. He's an associate professor of African and African American Studies and Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies at Washington University in St. Louis. He's the author of the award-winning book, Sexual Discretion, Black Masculinity, and the Politics of Passing. And he is presently completing 2 book projects, Disobedient Reading, An Experiment in Seeing Black, and another on the wildness of Kanye West titled On Kanye. He is published in a variety of journals, serves on the editorial board of numerous journals, and is the co-editor of the University of California Press's New Sexual Worlds book series. For his work at the intersections of race, gender, and sexuality, he has been featured on Left of Black, SiriusXM's Joe Madison Show, HuffPost Live, NPR, and as a guest expert on Bill Nye Saves the World. Tonight, he's going to get us started by talking briefly about Black LGBTQIA+ activist leaders and some ideas that emerged from Black LGBTQIA+ activists. And then he's going to lead a discussion with all of our wonderful panelists tonight, Dr. Monique Maxey, Vincent Tucker, aka Vicki Valentino, and Dr. Erise Williams. And so at this point, I'm going to cede the screen to Dr. McCune and let him take it away. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I don't think I can start the video, but I definitely, I think I can be heard. Oh, there we are. Voila. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about the opportunity to really talk with members of this community and to engage conversations around what is Black Pride and how can we talk about activism in this moment. And I think that to start this conversation, I would be remiss not to talk about the present moment that we are living in, the moment of great unrest in this country around issues of police violence against Black bodies for daring to be Black, right? And I am really heavy actually today. And I'll be honest, I was so taken by that my comments today that started as a kind of historiography moved into a much more theoretical and political invitation to think about Black sexuality and Black queerness as an act of disobedience. While I'm writing this book on disobedient reading, the frame of disobedience has been a part of what I've been thinking about. And today, what I'm really struck by is the ways in which America seems to be telling Black people over and over again that their existence is an act of disobedience. And so when I think about the many folks who have been trying to discover and find and develop a way to understand Black sexuality and Black queer spaces and Black queer social worlds and sexual worlds, when I think about that search, I think about the search itself as an act of disobedience. I think of it as folks saying that this is not a moment where we can continue with the same old history, with the same old stories. And just because segregation has invited us to not account for the multiple bodies and multiple experiences, we are going to do that work, right? We are going to disobediently inject ourselves into the archive of American and world history in ways that people have not seen before. And so one of the things I wanted to do was invite you all to think about even this moment of unrest, which is largely led by Black queer folks, as an extension of the historical Black queer movement from slavery to the present. Understanding that even in the midst of the slave plantations and quarters, where even there, reproduction of bodies, having babies and building things and creating the America that we've come to know was rooted in some idea of heterosexuality, that even in those moments, there were folks who dared to disobey, who dared to not be productive, who dared to not actually do what the master told them, who dared to kind of see themselves as queer subjects in the midst of this kind of status quo condition of Black people as property. And they moved against that system and in essence, right, performed a really, really deep disobedient reading of America, but also a disobedient performance of American citizenry, right? And in some ways, Black radical and disobedient performance of Blackness. And so part of what I'm working through is just what does it mean to be on the streets in this moment today as we see, you know, sports players, we see artists, we see so many folks who are saying, we will no longer do the labor of this society if in fact you cannot humanize us. If you're going to continue to dehumanize us and continue the historical tradition of lynching us, then we will not, right, show up to work, right? And so what was burdening me today was like, how can I show up to work and talk about pride if in fact, right, I am not feeling so prideful right now in this country that continues to injure us? And then I thought about it. I said that is actually what is, and I'm gonna actually do all this question on the panel as well, but that is actually what is so fascinating about the concept of Black pride versus what we might call dominant pride, right? That our pride always, right, invites us to think critically about the state of Black people, right? That even as we are engaging in parades and we're engaging in community building, that we're always negotiating the conditions of Black people in the world. And that position, right, is a position that disobeys the law of pride itself. Pride is just supposed to be celebration, say it loud, I'm proud, I'm queer and I'm proud, right? Like you know, and instead of that, right, we have decided, right, to evoke Black pride as we have come to know it, right? And we began to understand ourselves to be a people who understands that pride is not just about festivity, but pride is about the fierceness of Blackness that is necessary to survive. And so for me, you know, coming in this moment where we're really reflecting on the abuse of power of the state on Black bodies, Black queer people being involved is not a coincidence, because we have historically been quiet, unfortunately, been quieted, not quiet, but quieted about the violences that have been done to our body in the name of pride, in the name of white civilization, in the name of the Dred Scott decision, right? That we've always been up against, right, the norms of this society. And so I am hesitant in some ways, right, to historicize, right, this development of pride over time. But I do want to say a few things, that there's something important. The last thing I'll say, because I guess I got 3 minutes, but there's something really important about understanding that, you know, in music we call this counterpuntal, right? Like that Black life is always counterpuntal, right? It is in the moment and out of the moment, in the moment and out of the moment, in the moment and out of the moment, right? And part of what I'm saying is that every moment of American history where Black people are involved is a moment of trying to find joy in the midst of despair, right? And it's always simultaneous, right? It's neither nor, right? Like, so this is why when we protest, right, it is unfair for people to only talk about the looting in the street and the rioting, right? Because at the same time, we have people who are in drag performance, who are performing as Michael Jackson, who are performing as Janet Jackson, right? Right? We have that simultaneous. We have folks who are in the streets saying, you know, we will not rest, right? We cannot be quiet, right? We can't breathe, right? Simultaneously, while we have people who are actually breathing, who are actually laughing, who are actually smiling, right? And it's that simultaneity that gets erased, right, when this state tries to stamp on the actual reality of what it is that Black people are articulating in these moments of great unrest, right? And so to read the basketball players even today as a protest is actually a misreading, when in fact it is a strike, right? And it's something very significant about understanding that, right? Now, why is that relevant to Black pride? Well, that's because we don't get to not be Black, right? So even if I am in a moment where I want to celebrate my LGBTQIA self, right, I am also burdened with the reality that not only have we disproportionate rates of violence against Black trans women's bodies, right, and Black trans men's bodies as well, right? Not only do I have to face that, but I also have to face that my brother, my cis brother, or my cis sister even, right, has been subjugated under the pressures and power of the state and its police and its institutions. And so I wanted to start there. I mean, there's so much to talk about that I could talk about in terms of thinking about the span of history of what I call lay activists, right? Because I think we spend a lot of time talking about grand activists, but I was just reflecting on even things like Miss Fanny's Ball as a site of activism, right? Where we know we're living in a world that's telling people in the 1950s to be segregated, that people do not coalesce and convene, right? But yet people are like, no, we are creating a queer space, and it's queer because it's against this white normativity that says that folks cannot co-convene and be together. And that's not to say there weren't tensions, right? But that's to say that that was one space of possibility that, of course, foreshadows rehab and foreshadows other places where we see, you know, cross-cultural production and cross-cultural convening and cross-cultural relationships, right? I think there's so many places when we think about HIV/AIDS and we think about the work that Black lesbian women did, right, to care for Black queer men who were suffering AIDS, right, and still are doing that work, right, that we have to talk about those alliances and coalitions as we think about these relationships, that we don't do any of this alone, right, that we disobey the law that says that we are individuals, but understanding that Black Pride has been so much about collectivity and our possibility. I'll stop there, and then I guess I'll turn it back over to you to introduce the rest of the panel, but that's where I want to go today.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, I'm going to bring the rest of our panelists. Actually, you can all turn on your cameras and your mics if that's all right. We've got Dr. Erise Williams, Dr. Monique Maxey, and Vincent Tucker all with us today. And I'm actually going to let you all introduce yourselves. If you want to just take a quick moment and let us know, tell us a little bit who you are and who you work with, or I guess, we brought you here because you in some way are in an activist space. So maybe what that means to you to be in an activist space, and then I'll let Jeffrey take the conversation from there.
Okay, Emily, I can't start the video.
Oh, I'm gonna fix that for you right now. Can you do that?
There we go.
Wonderful. Great. Right. And any of you can start. Erise, since you're already we're already chatting, you want to go ahead and start.
Yeah. And before I start, let me just make one small correction. It's not Dr. Erise Williams, it's just Erise Williams. But
I
yeah,
gave you a new degree. That's
yeah, converted by the community. Yeah, I'm Erise Williams. I have been involved in the community in terms of activism for 25 plus years. And I have to say, even though most of my activism has been around HIV and AIDS in the Black community, and particularly among Black gay men, my activism actually started in college during undergrad in terms of protesting against apartheid back in the late 80s. And that kind of got me going. It's kind of like the thing that kind of got me started, and was what little did I know, preparing me for the long battle around activism around Black LGBT issues and HIV and AIDS. I am one of the original founders of Black Pride. There were actually 3 or 4 of us. And Dr. McCune talked earlier about the role of Black lesbians. Little do some people know, the idea of St. Louis having a Black Pride actually came from a group of Black lesbians who brought it to me at the time that we need to have our own Black Pride. We ended up creating a Black Pride that is the second oldest in the country, only second to DC's Black Pride, right here in St. Louis. So very proud of that. You're going to hear from Vincent Tucker later. He also played a very instrumental role in that, in terms of the starting of Black Pride and mobilizing the community, the Black LGBT community around, having a Black Pride and what that meant for us. And I found it very interesting too. I'm sorry, I'm getting into it, but I thought you were supposed to be just doing introductions. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna stop right there and we'll come back. I'm Erise Williams, one of the co-founders of St. Louis Black Pride, currently president and CEO and co-founder of Williams & Associates, which is a public health agency addressing minority health disparities.
Monique, why don't you take it?
Okay, I was saying I'll go. Hi, my name is Monique Maxey, and so I was just thinking as you all were talking, because I don't tend to think of myself just in terms of an activist, and not to say that I am not, but I think that some people want to, you know, they see activism in certain ways. They always think of frontline people, people that are leading marches. And so people, you know, may often say, well, what can I do if I'm not on the front line? And I think that I have always been one of those people. It's just kind of, you know, the person that I am, the work that I chose to do, which is clinical psychology, kind of thrust you into that period of being an activist because you are advocating for people, you know, and so you kind of go about and don't necessarily say, I'm going to pick this role, I'm going to do this, but you kind of find with the work that you do, you start to do those things and to become active for your community. So, you know, things that I joined Black Pride back in early 2000s, around 2003 or 4. I did a PR for Black Pride, and then I left and went away to grad school, and came back last year in 2019 to serve as the chair of health and wellness. I also did a couple of queer focused open mics in the community. And so I would always say, even on stage, you know, a quote, I believe it's Audre Lorde, that says that the personal is political. And so that's what begins to happen, is that you are talking about your personal life and experiences, and it's political. You know, the act of standing on stage, and I would tell my audiences all the time, just the act of standing on stage, professing your love for, you know, same gender, is in and of itself a political act. And so, you know, getting into those spaces and working with that has allowed me to fuel my activism and do what is needed to see about change within this community. So that's who I am. I currently work at Behavioral Health Response, and I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, emphasis in forensics and child and adolescence.
Okay.
I'm done.
Vincent?
Oh, hey. Y'all have to pardon me. I had to unmute my mic. Hi, everybody. My name is Vincent Tucker. And Dr. McHugh Jeffrey, you mentioned Fanny's Ball. My name is synonymous with Fanny's Ball because actually I am a career female impersonator of 35 years. I'm Dickie Valentino. And so it's really heartwarming to know that you mentioned Fanny's Ball, because I've been actually the host and MC and event coordinator for that for the past 23 years. And as far as activism, I have used my platform of female impersonation to galvanize and to interrupt the program of what female impersonation is and what it can be, all while supporting those who have chose to live alternative lifestyles, whereas they are trans. Certainly, many of them have come under my motherhood. I'll just go ahead and say that. But as far as being an activist, it has always been my desire to make sure that we as African Americans are seen from another perspective, because there's so many idiosyncrasies about who African American people are, especially as it relates to female impersonators. I mean, look at me. You would never think that I'm Vicky Valentino, but I am. And it's my artistry. And I always encourage individuals to express themselves the way that they want to. If they want to choose a trans lifestyle, make sure that they've done their research and that they've done all medical investigations as to how this will transform their lives totally, and not just for the stage. My activism with Black Pride, I'm one of the original co-founders of that, and I'm so very proud of that, and I'm proud of what it represents, and most importantly, I'm proud of ERISE for engaging me in such a endeavor because I was just emceeing at clubs and stuff like that. But I had a lot of influence, and I used my influence and my platform to galvanize not only African Americans, but all people. But I do stand on the shoulders of those who came before me. And when you see me, you know that I'm African American. But with that being said, you know that I am intelligent, I'm beautiful, and I am encouraged by all that we have done and all that Black people have done to make this community, St. Louis, what it is. And I will never, never lose my identity as an African American female impersonator, educated professional. I will never lose my identity of that. And I'd also like to introduce myself to some and present myself to others as that, be it whatever race you are, Black, white, Indian, Asian, whatever it is. I want you to know what my identity is, and my advocacy is definitely for the African American community.
Great. Well, I am great. I think everybody can turn off their mics because we're going to have a dialogue now. And I'm really excited about being on an esteemed panel. I've been on so many panels with ERISE since I've been in St. Louis. You know, it's going to be very interesting when I'm not able to have these quick, you know, conversations with you. But that's another story for another day. But I'm really grateful to have such a diverse panel and to have these conversations. And something that's just sitting with me is a question that I imagine folks here might be interested in, which is, what is Black pride for you? Whether it be, what was it when those early days, ERISE, what was it for you? And how has it changed today, right? You know, because I know some folks who, you know, who drink the Kool-Aid and say, you know, Black Pride is a good time weekend, right? And so, but then there's others, and I don't mind that perspective. But then also I think about your work, Monique, in terms of thinking about Black pride as a kind of psychological or psychical condition that counters, right, Black pain, right, and Black doubt. And just thinking about that. And then to your point, right, of entertainment. I mean, entertainment is not just entertainment, right? You're really giving me something. So I'm wondering, how do you all see Black pride?
I would say this. For me, Black pride has always been about community. And in the sense that, and that's something that's very unique about us as Black people in general. When we are shut out, we go the other way and create our own thing. You know, Black fraternities and sororities started that way, and thus Black pride started that way. We did not feel welcomed or inclusive in terms of the dominant pride, and Black prides in St. Louis, DC, all as a result of that, it was us saying, hey, let's do our own thing. Let's create this for our community. And it's very unique in the sense that one of the good things that came out of that was that we got to know each other better, you know, and we were able to identify what our needs were, you know, and what we liked, and how we create the safe space or a courageous space. I say courageous because within that whole intersectionality of being Black in the Black community, but also being gay, lesbian, bisexual, whatever, trans, you know, that really sort of forced us to almost, in a sense, feel like we had to make a choice, you know. But instead of making a choice, what we did was we learned how to navigate those two worlds, because there were a lot of similarities that you mentioned earlier, Dr. Jeffrey, that a lot of similarities in terms of the cause and the activism around the African American community in general, in the Black LGBT community as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Black pride to me is about community.
Right.
I would say for me, you know, in terms of thinking about Black Pride, I think about when I first came home from college. So that was 1998. I'm not too ashamed to say, you know, but that's when I first came home from college. And that is what you begin to, you know, I started to settle into my identity. I think I probably came out about 21 to my mom, and I'm settling into my identity. So when you're settling into your identity, you look for things to affirm you. And so that's what I began to do, is to look and see, look for queer spaces. I know that queer people hang out in the Central West End, so I'm gonna hang out there, you know. I started going to Left Bank Books, you know, and I would just spend hours there, just soaking up. It's just, you know, reaffirming this identity. This identity is new for me, you know, and so part of that development. And so you're looking for that, and I'm looking for the spaces where Black queer people gather, you know. So I started, you know, I would look at things because you are in Central West End, you pick up, you know, papers and flyers, and I see something in there that's advertising like the B-Boy Blues Festival, you know. So I know B-Boy Blues because I've read that book. Why did I read that book? Because it's queer and it's Black, you know, and so feeling things. So I'm not a B-Boy, okay, but I'm going to the queer spaces, you know, and so that's where, you know, I wanted to go where I could start to celebrate these places of my identity. So again, it is community, but it's also, you know, it's finding those who affirm who you are. And so whether it is that joy or that pain, you want someone who has shared experience that is with you. And so to me, that is ultimately, you know, what Black Pride is. And that is, you know, how I stumbled upon that. You know, I stumbled upon B-Boy Blues, which led to finding out about Black Pride, which led to me then serving on the board. So, you know, for all of those things, that's what it is for me.
Awesome. Listen.
Okay, and for me, Dr. Maxey, it's funny that you mentioned B-Boy Blues, because actually our very first event, Black Pride, before what it's known now as Black Pride, it was the B-Boy Blues Festival.
Yeah.
And it was based on the book. And then we had James Earl Hardy here. And unlike anything else, it was an opportunity to identify and to commune with the writer of this book, because it was such an intriguing story to Erise just thought it would be best that we get to see who wrote this book. And so
can you tell us a little bit about it for those who might not be familiar?
About the book?
Yeah, just a little bit for, you know, our audience members who
Well, Erise probably can tell you a little bit more. I mean, I have favorites, and it may get a little X-rated, so I don't want to do that on the site.
We'll just call it one of the first hip-hop gay love stories.
Oh my God! Yeah. And it was such an explosive thing, because those who didn't read the book, when someone told someone who didn't read the book and how excited they were about it, it was like, what? You know, it was one of those things. So for me, Dr. Maxey, thank you for bringing it. It's affirmation and it's celebration for me. If I can be transparently honest, it's not like it used to be. And in my spirituality, I know that things are going to change and things are not going to be as they used to be, because some of the participants who were instrumental in making it happen are no longer interested, and sadly, some of them are no longer here. And so we had an enthusiastic base at that time that was unsurpassed. And unlike now, the guards have changed. Even so, the guards have been let down into the true reality of celebration that this is supposed to be. So I do have to applaud Randy and his team of people who are trying to reignite that. But if I can be totally honest, it has lost it's just lost something from what it used to be, because even around the country, Black Prides are not as they were. And this was like prior pandemic. So it's not St. Louis only, it's just Black Prides, period. If I could be honest, some of the Black Prides were sex fest, and that's unfortunate, but that's what it was. It was a time to wear something that you never wore before, just to do your pride thing. So it was affirmation, it was celebration, because during that time, during the time of Black Pride, it was always in the latter part of August. It was just, you know, at the end of summer, right in the midst of summer. It was a celebration for us to come together and just be us and identify ourselves to one another. And Eraz did mention that we learned so much about ourselves and learned so much about each other while planning this. And then with that same enthusiasm, we were able to present something that exemplified how we felt, and people gravitated to that. And so, I mean, I'm getting excited about the past because I live in the past quite often, but I'm proud of it. I'm proud of I'm proud of the little that we had and the much that we made out of it. Because please be it known, we fought for the little funding that we had, but we made such strides in the little of it. So that's Black pride in and of itself, because Black people for a long time have had to do a lot with a little. And for that, I'm grateful. That I'm grateful for what we were able to do. And I do applaud those who are on the front lines of attempting to reignite that. I think there needs to be a revisioning of it. I don't have that vision because I'm so old school. I'm from the, you know what I mean? And I don't want to always inflect my old self into it, you know what I'm saying? Because that may not work for the community now, but it's celebration for me. And it still is. It'll always be celebration in my heart.
Yeah, and I think too, to add to that, Vincent, the thing I think that when you talk about change, I think, like you said, we were so happy and excited for what we were able to do.
Yeah.
Now I think we're talking about a generation that is, and this is on both sides, Black and white, that is very embracing of each other, and this whole thing about diversity and working together and what have you, that some of what we had in the past got lost.
It did, yeah.
You know, because we were very, you know, even how we identify ourselves. You know, words are very important, and not to criticize anybody tonight. And like, you know, I know now, and this is not just tonight, but even through all my conversations, particularly with that millennial generation, you know, this identity of queer. You know, that as Black LGBT people, that wasn't a word that we used.
Not at all.
You know, like, what is that? You know, so it's, you know, it's I'm like you, Vincent. I just got to give it up because that's the past. And
Right.
I got to get on the train with the kids.
I know.
So I want to interrogate this a little bit, and people, if you have questions in this area, please put the questions in the Q&A really right now, because I bet there's some folks out here who got things to say about how we're characterizing the contemporary. And, you know, I am, you know, between y'all somewhere. I don't know where I'm between it. And so my opinion is, you know, there's really great nostalgia for the past. And you're right. I love what you were saying, Eraz, around like, the things that we used to need, because we were, I don't know about you, I was desperate for community. Like, it was like, I don't know nobody. This is the only time I'm gonna get some. You're clear, right? Like, oh, this is the only time I'm gonna get some books, right? Or some, whatever. But, you know, and I was clear, right? This is where I'm gonna get all the love for my year, right? In this space, right? That was Chicago for me, right? And I came to St. Louis a couple times. But what I see now is there is a kind of, almost like it's obsolete for a lot of young people, where they're like, we get together at so-and-so's house every week.
Yeah.
Or we hang out in the Grove every week, or Attitudes when it was around, right? Like we're at Attitudes on Thursday, we commune, we have a good time, we feel like we got community, and then we go and hang out some more. And so when you say, oh, we need Black pride, they're like, what do we need? We got pride.
Right.
So I'm wondering if there's a changing language, right? That the idea of pride, even for white young people, might actually take on some new dimensions now, where people need something else, right? And I don't know what it is exactly. I imagine for Black people, actually, interestingly, this actually may be a coalitional possibility, thinking about what I was saying earlier around this moment where we're feeling a lot of Black pain and doubt, right? I feel like Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud needs to come back now because of like people trying to annihilate, right, us, right? Like it's literally kill us, right? And we know HIV/AIDS ravaged our community, but also poverty, other diseases, right? So many of my friends died of heart failure in their 30s, right? What was that stress, right? So I'm wondering if there might be new language. Like, do you find that some young people, and Monique, I know you work a lot with young people, right? What do you find is the new language that young people are using to talk about their identities? Or is there new language, or is it just different?
Whoa, no, there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of new language. And I think that you are absolutely right. You know, there is this generation gap, you know, and also in the way, I mean, you see it permeated throughout though. So when one generation doesn't see what the other generation is doing, perhaps, you know, and it came up because we were having a discussion about like meetings and protests, and you know, and so someone from an older generation was saying that they didn't see anyone that was, you know, trans or non-binary involved in the protests. And so then the other generation was like, what do you mean? Like, that's who organizes it. So it just seems to be a communication gap of what is needed. And, you know, we need people to come in to fill in those gaps. So like you said, we know it's something, but without us coming together to the table to discuss what that something is, it's like, you know, we are missing it. Because you're right, like you said, we have more, you know, at that time, like when I go back to talking about I didn't know any other queer people. Yep. You know, now that's not the case. You see, you know, you see or are familiar with so many queer people. We fellowship, you know, whereas I was hungry for that fellowship. You know, like you said, we meeting every night, you know, for drinks here and there. So what is it that we can give them, you know, other than that initial sense of community to continue to foster that Black pride? And what you said about also we having the Black pain as well simultaneously with the Black pride, like we still need to offer spaces for that, because as much as we are celebrating, you know, there are also spaces of pain. Even when we talk about Black Lives Matter movement, you have some people that are opposed, even though it was started by queer women, you know, that have something to say when we say Black trans lives matter, or, you know, including people in that. There's still a big division, and that is something that is affecting us all. Whether we have our friends on Thursday nights and we got our own groups, we're still having problems coming together in that realm. So we need to have conversations about how do we fill up this gap.
That is so true. And Jeffrey, it's so interesting you brought up, you know, the phrase "say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud." About 25 years ago, the National Black Gay and Lesbian Task Force did this national report survey, and it was entitled "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud."
I remember.
Read that. And the thing I remember from that report is how they talk about all those social determinants, not just our identities as Black, gay, and lesbian, trans people, but those social determinants that impacted us, you know, in terms of employment, school, and how homophobia kind of stifled us, you know, in trying to pursue those things. And those things still exist, I think, you know, but I think our young people, as Monique mentioned, they have a different way of dealing with it now. They're more vocal about it. You know, I have the right, my rights. You know, you're not gonna take this from me. This is what I have the right like anybody else. This is who I am. You know, and whereas for my generation, I can speak for my generation. But my generation, when I was coming up, I remember there was a movie called Boys in the Band, and there was one black character in that movie. It was based like in the 70s. I think I was like 12, 13 years old. I didn't even know that I was gay, but it was something about that black guy in that movie. He was attractive. But it was something about him. I was so proud of him because he was presenting himself as a gay man, and it was a gay man that I hadn't seen before. The type of gay man I hadn't seen before. So we were desperate for those kind of images and stuff. And now they just have a smorgasbord of images.
Right. So one thing you said though, like you guys, I think that's really important. I'm just trying to figure it out. Because DC is a different type of Black Pride, right? It always has been, but it's partially because it's resourced in a different kind of way, right? Too.
Absolutely.
But part of what I just heard you say that was really interesting, and kind of like, I'm like, Randy, I'm gonna give this to you. What would it mean really to take seriously this idea? And I know some folks gonna have some problem with me saying this, but I actually think this is true. All across the city, when I'm talking to people on the phones, when I'm going into restaurants, when I'm going into the library, the museum, there is some queer person who is there, was hired because people entrusted with them, this type of responsibility because they're so da-da-da. When you go to get tested, there are these queer folk who are in the front who are charisma and all this stuff, right? And DC does this thing where they have like actual jobs and corporations that are hiring people, right? Under the idea that we are good, fierce workers because of our many social determinants that make us fierce, right? So I'm interested in what it might mean to partner with some of those same people, the Censures and all these other folks in Square and all these Wash U even, right? Bringing them to the fold and saying like, we're not only just doing Pride, but we actually saying, we already know we got it. And we want you to know that we bring in resumes and everything, in addition to partying and having fun, we also are trying to create this kind of space where you understand the value of us, right? And so that really just came to me as something that's really, really might be powerful and rich. So Randy, take that note. There's many folks who I'm sure are looking for us. Vincent wanted to say something. I'm sorry, Vincent.
No, it's and I hate to be the Debbie Downer on this, but as things have changed and we're in this generational gap, Dr. Maxey, thanks for mentioning that, because I'm trying to really understand it, because what has happened, and it's not like in my generation, there weren't what I'm about to mention, but it seems like now, in order to be in, you have to be a participant in this. And it's like drugs. Drugs and these recreational drugs have just diminished the willpower to really want to do something worthwhile. I mean, you can always get agitated about what we see on the news and Black Lives Matter, and everything that is happening, the Breonna Taylor, the George Floyd, and those sort of things. Yes, gay Black people are internally angry about that, but many of the youngsters use drugs as an escape so they don't have to think about it. They don't have to articulate their feelings other than anger, and to engage them in anything that's positive in terms of what we would like to do or how we would like to see Black Pride to be, because Black Pride was not just a festival of just coming out and having fun. In the past, we had workshops and people came to the workshops. We had jazz brunch. We had a myriad of opportunities for us. If you didn't enjoy this part of it, then you came to this part only. But then the next time you heard about how good this part was. And so each year, it was compounded with more people coming to participate, because not only did we have, a festival in the park where there was music, but we had intimate conversations at a round table. As I can remember, we were with the place on Delmore. Some of the best Black Pride times were held at those tables. There were tears, fears, everything was just dismantled at that time. And I was able to capture so many emotions from that. And I was able to display that emotion to people that I came in contact with, which made them want to be a better and a bigger part of it. But now I can't reach those people like I could before. Yes, I'm older, I'm in my 50s, I understand that. But this notion that drugs takes you higher when it actually brings you lower to the understanding and the plight of what's really going on around you is what hardens my heart. You know what I mean? Because I'm unable to do what I used to do, and I beat myself up as what is it that I can do to turn this situation around. So to be honest with you guys, I've resigned in a way because it grieves my spirit more so than anything, but in no way does it grieve my idea of what Black pride can be, but I don't know what that is. And it's because of, like you said, Dr. Maxey, that generational gap. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know what can be done.
But I heard it, right? Like, so, like even in what you said, I heard the generational gap, right? Like this presumption of like, you know, of course I gotta, you know, I'm trying to like fill in the gap a little bit for my young folk, right? who will say it's not about suppressing, you know, the social realities of Black people. Like we know what's going on, right? It's about, I want to fucking smoke weed.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, this is a Missouri history museum. I gotta remember, like, you know, but you know, I want to smoke weed. But this is the thing, right? It's not always attached to some pathology, right? Like, so like, I'm trying to get us away from this. And I know, Dr. Maxey, you might disagree with me a little bit on this, but like, I don't think every person who is engaging in recreational drugs is necessarily trying to feed a loss or a void, right? Some folks are really engaging in something recreational, the same way that white people get to the place where they do that as well. Here's the thing, though. What I feel from you, Vincent, is this: there is something about these patterns, though, that we see like over and over again. I don't know if you know them, but I have mentees who I told you to get up for that job interview, right? And they haven't figured out how to be a functional smoking person. You know, I had a grandfather who drank. He was a functional alcoholic, a police officer too, right? I don't know, but you know,
that's
like
that generation.
Right. But being functional seems to be very difficult. But what I want to say is, I think functionality is difficult because of the fierce world in which they're actually living, right? Like asking them to be functional in St. Louis specifically, because we haven't really, this is where I want to go next, right? There's folks who are asking questions about St. Louis specific, right? We got to be real about the context of St. Louis. And that many of our young people have grown up with. I can't tell you how many times I said, "You're from St. Louis? How you like St. Louis?" Child. I'm like, wait a minute, this is your city. You know, Chicago people, we be like, Chicago, baby, Chi-Town. I don't care which part you from, right? There's something happening here about this kind of malaise and lamentation around understandings of St. Louis as a place that has these divisions. And I know what it is, because they say it every time. I grew up on that side, right? And it's almost like it's in the water, but it really is in white people's DNA. Like, white people have actually created this narrative of the North Side as being unproductive, disease, you know, COVID ridden, right? All these things that we're hearing now over and over again. And I think that we, in some ways, embrace some of that, right? Some young people have embraced that, and they're not mobile, right? So it's not the weed to me. It's actually the imagination is limited, right? Like, you all seem to have had some radical imaginations, and I'm wondering, why did you have radical imaginations in the 80s? What was it about?
Well, I could say this, like, you know, one of our struggles was, I guess, in the latter part, not the initial, because it was something that when we launched the B-Boy Blues Festival and it ultimately became Black Pride, when people got a taste of the DC, the Chicago, the Atlanta prides and all of that, and they saw the vast number of people that they've never seen before, that they can probably be someone else when they go there, they would see that and they would identify that as the best pride. So when it came to home, you forgot that before you ever saw that, this is what you had. So that's always been my challenge, to say that. And one of the slogans that we adopted was, this is our city, our pride. Go to Chicago and all of that. You've got to take on that belief that this is what we have. And I was really adamant about that when I suggested that slogan to our board, because I want you to come with the mindset that this is St. Louis. This is what we have to offer. These are the resources that we have. If you go to those other places, find out what those resources are and see if we can tap into that rather than tear down your own city, because I'm totally offended, and I've got offended a lot of times by that. You know what I mean? Because I understand I've been a part of all of the prides across the country, but I always had a pride, a super pride, not because I was one of the co-founders, but I had a super pride about my own city. And I tried to change that narrative and tried to change that mindset with a lot of the people who participated in our pride. Did a little bit, but I mean, I don't know how much it did, but reverbing that all the time made me feel better about what we were accomplishing here. And it's funny that you say that, Dr. Jeff, because people tend to down St. Louis when they go to other places where they can't afford to live. And they're living a superficial life that they can't afford. You know what I mean? They'll go to Atlanta. That's why I don't do bon voyage parties. Oh, she's moving to so-and-so and so. I don't go to those because I know in less than a year or so, or a couple of years, you're going to be right back here. You say, you still here? Where was I going? You probably should have stayed as well, because you went somewhere where you couldn't get a job. You couldn't get a job here either, because that was because of your identity and what your mindset was. But you went down there and thought that you were going to be the superhero. So they always have negative things to say about St. Louis, but always wind up coming back here. And that's unfortunate as well. And
Yeah, so someone just told me that we got about 10 minutes. I can't believe it, but like, I thought we were going to 8. I don't know why. So that city pride is interesting. Like what you were saying about like the relationship between Black pride and city pride, right? Our city, our pride. That may be something, Randy, to think about as well. I mean, I know this is not just a debriefing to figure out how we can get this together. I just think that this is important information, and why
we still have the T-shirts.
Oh, well, we might need to bring those back. You know,
you still have yours. I started to put mine on. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I still have mine.
But it's my treasure. It's a black T-shirt, and it's written in white, "Our city, our pride."
Well, that's a blessing that you can still fit it. I don't think I can fit anything from the 80s, but bless you.
It's a medium.
Well, okay. So I gotta many people said, but can we go to 8 because they have more questions? And I think I'm okay with that. The historical Missouri okay, that's fine. I got a yes. Thank you. Okay, great, beautiful. So I got more questions then. But I think Monique wanted to say something about this like what's different about pride. Am I right?
No, I was looking at the Q&A, seeing that we had the questions. That was all.
Okay.
I did have something to say at Vincent, but I'm gonna forget it and come back to it if I remember.
Beautiful. So, I think that there's gonna be a follow-up to this, and I'm gonna get to my good friend's question here too. But I think there's gonna be a follow-up. I gotta ask ethically. I think it's important that I ask a question ethically, and I think Vincent might have froze, but I'm hoping he comes back.
Right.
There you go. So might it also be that the conditions of the last decade for Black people have made sexuality a kind of subterranean, tertiary, right? Like we got all this going on, y'all. The social determinants are real, right? The injuries of inequality are real.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to your pride, I'm trying to make some money. I'm trying to do other things. Could it be possible that the racist, anti-Black world has created some problems for us in terms of how we are able to do Pride. Maybe we need to have Pride throughout the year instead of having it one time, right? And I don't know, but I mean, what do people think about that? Because I see young people stressed out.
I want to say this. I was telling Randy this before, like we were, and let me be very brief. I was telling Randy, like, a lot of times we have this idea about planning so much and planning so many activities that people are stretching themselves as to which one I'm going to attend. I think there should be one powwow and that be it. And in that powwow, strategically implement everything, because you're not going to successfully accomplish all that you set out to do.
Yeah.
But I think when you give me too many options, then I refuse them all mentally in the back of my mind. So, I mean, I think with this, I think there needs to be like one powwow and just let that be it. That's my opinion.
I
because
think
I don't have the options.
Go ahead, E.
Go ahead, Monique. I was just gonna say I agree with Vincent on that, but I think having a, like Dr. McHugh said earlier, having it throughout the year, maybe one powwow in the spring, one powwow in the winter, because you have to kind of come back and talk about next steps, I think, once you leave that space. And there's a good friend of mine used to say, as far as young Black, gay, and lesbian folks are concerned, a new group come out each year. There's a new batch of them coming, yeah. So I think maybe throughout the year, maybe instead of just that once a year.
And I think that we need more youth.
Yeah.
We need more youth. I feel that one of the largest problems is that people see it to be, they don't see Black Pride as theirs.
Mm.
It's like something that we as parents put on for the kids, right? And so, and so the kids rebel because they didn't have a part in it.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Even though meetings are open, things are open, there needs to be an active pull to say, this is yours too. I think that's really what, and so, even when you do go to other cities, other people have things, even if it's under the Black Pride, but maybe, I don't know, the Kitty Cat girls may have something, and then this group has something. So they feel like it's not just an overarching governing body of Black Pride telling you what to do. And I think that is one of the things that, has made, not the only thing, but it's definitely a large component. I think the other thing that you all were talking about with the pride in your city, there is, we're going to have a lot to do with that, as far as like bringing back and uplifting it to be our city. But I definitely feel like a lot of people feel like pride is kind of thrown upon them and they don't have ownership in pride.
Yeah, and I imagine also the other thing that happens in every city, right, is the comparative. I used to be on the St. Louis Pride STL, and there's always this comparative between the large scale Pride and our Pride, right? And which makes, and so part of me actually, my argument with Pride STL was that this kind of becomes racist in its formation, right? That if we're not partnering with Black Pride, we're not partnering with MTUG, we're not partnering with all these organizations in a way that actually helps fund, right, and give them the type of resources that could expand, we are actually not doing the good work, right? And I left because of that mostly, right? Also because I was leaving St. Louis, but like also just because I just got tired, right? And part of me, and I was only there for like 6 months, I think, but like anyway, my point was just to say that, I think we gotta really figure out what is the Black Pride brand. And this is not about Randy or in his leadership or anybody else's leadership. It's about, what is the brand? And I'm not even talking about just the institution of Black Pride, but what is the thing that makes, like when we do a ball, what is the Black Pride ball and who is sponsoring it? Because it can't be me. Ain't nobody gonna come if I host a Black, I'm sorry, it's not gonna, people not gonna come. It's not my thing. But I bet you if you get Pastor so-and-so coupled with, 19-year-old Joe who works for the spot, and then you get 25-year-old so-and-so together, and they partner and they're bringing their different people, you might be surprised at what kind of partnerships can be created. But I do also know that, there's many barriers, right, between the generations, as you said, Monique, that make it very difficult. But I think that opening the door is just the first step. And I'm sure that many people in Black Pride have already tried to do some of this on some level. But I think that figuring out, just being honest about, I'll tell you, just being on Pride STL, what I learned is they kind of know who are the people who are going to bring the bodies, right? And they keep those people, right? And it's interesting to kind of start asking questions around who can bring the community together. Because I'm sorry, Thursday nights ain't never been low at Attitudes ever. Like I tried to get in one time. I'm like, it's Corona, y'all. How could y'all? No, I'm not going up there. But that's amazing, right? Energy of that. So anyway, that's one thing I want to say. But I want to ask this question from a good friend on the line. Oh, sorry, Erise.
Before we do that, I wanted to go back to what you said earlier about, with the whole Black Lives Matters and COVID and all of that, and maybe to help people just to have things to be proud about. Thinking about my own experience, because I came up during the HIV/AIDS, the beginning of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And not only did we come out, so to speak, to the world in terms of our identity, but we had to face and deal with this thing called AIDS. And for the Black community, at the same time, we had to also deal with this thing called crack, and how that was impacting our communities, be you straight, gay, trans, whatever it may have been. But somehow, through all of that, all of the death, all of the sickness, we found a way to be resilient and say, I am who I am, and I am proud of who I am, and I want to create a community for people like me. So I hear you, Jeff, when you talk about some of the challenges that young people have, and I empathize because I'm going through it too. None of us are exempt.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering what happened to that resiliency, that we've had like back in the 80s to even get us to where we are today.
Climate change.
Climate change, right?
When I say climate change, I don't mean like the weather, climate change in the sense of how, I think Erise and I always go back to how things were. It's interesting to see how things have changed, and they've changed drastically. Jeff, and be it known that Randy has done his due diligence with trying to invite people to the table to discuss, and Dr. Maxey, that has been done. Thank you for acknowledging that, because I think he has done that. He himself, we've always had like young entrepreneurial and inspirational youth leaders who have guided the success of Black Pride, with our tutelage as much as possible, but they were able to pave avenues that Erise and myself and Dr. Green, Mr. Green, and so many others from the originals weren't able to do. I'll mention like Anthony Galloway. Anthony Galloway was able to galvanize a different type of people that, and
still is.
Yeah, and he was clear. And he was very young. He was very young when he did that. And we, Erise and I and Mr. Green and Tanya, I call those the originals. The originals. We stepped aside and just let him do it. You know what I mean? And I just want, and he's been away for so long, so he's lost the climate of what goes on here because he's in Chicago, so it's a bigger resource and all of that sort of thing. So it's kind of different. So actually to consult him would not be something that will be effective for us as we stand now. But I do believe, and it's funny that you say that Ming Lee, Jeff, is the one who galvanized all those young people on Thursday nights. That's my niece.
I love her.
And she's actually part of the people. Erise, do you remember? She was our Black Pride queen.
Yes.
When she was like very young. She was like 18. She
Good,
had no business. Yeah, so you know, and she was one of the ones that was empowered to change this climate. And I think, you know, to Dr. Maxey's point, I think everybody needs something in order to make this work. Like, I don't need a ball, although I can go, but some people might not need a ball, just like people don't like to do pageants and drag. But, Dr. Jeff, may I say this? Black Pride attempted that. And it brought about a separation that we didn't anticipate, because it was like a group of lesbians had this party and they didn't want to consult Black Pride about it, as if we didn't matter. We had to know something about it, but we didn't know anything about it. And then there was like 5 or 6 different parties that came up, and they were not cohesive in terms of what our goal was. And then that's where the separation came, Dr. Max. You know what I'm saying?
I remember. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing about giving people a piece of it. There has to be one piece that we all come together on. And I think with the plight that we're experiencing now with the Black Lives Matter movement and so much oppression and suppression around that, there needs to be something that's poignant and positive. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to go with the woe is me, the woe is Black people plight. I want to come to something that lifts me up. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to raise my fist like that. I'm just not going to do that, because that's not my feeling at this time. My feeling is not my fist. It's just not. It's my heart, and I want to see us love each other first. Before we can combat any of the other things that are surrounding us, we must love each other first. And when we do that, I believe that the forces of love will overcome a lot of the resistance that we see amongst the brethren and amongst the oppressing that Black people receive in the city. If we start loving one another and we have a climate that embraces that, I think we would fare better in what we term as Black Pride. I think we need to start loving ourselves first and loving each other. That's how I feel.
Okay, so now you're going down my lane. Look at you going down my lane. So I will say we've done that. That actually is a little slightly antithetical to history, right? Like the more we love each other, the more they kill us, right? Like so this is not. I mean, the Obama moment was a moment of too much Black love. It was too much. Right, and so history shows us that we could do both. We could walk and chew gum at the same time. And I agree with you. We have to love each other more. I think the most radical act that we can do as Black queer folk is just keep loving on each other through it all.
Yeah, because you know what? To be honest with you guys and transparent, I'm beginning, and I've wondered this for a long time. When is Black lives going to matter to Black people?
Well, I think that
I need the resolution to that question. Not that I'm not for Black Lives Matter, the movement.
Well, okay, this is a different debate, but I will say that I will say we are already us living, right? Mm-hmm. Is recognition that Black lives matter, right? Mm-hmm. What we're doing right now, what these young people are doing, even sometimes I think even things that we are calling, taboo or trivial, right? Are ways in which people are trying to survive and live and say their lives matter to them so much that they need to not engage in the violence of the world in particular ways, right? Thinking about, what you said about earlier about weed and drugs, right? That some of that is about how can I live in this world amongst my brother and sister, and right? How can I do that, right? And I'm not trying to so I push back against this all the time because I get this conversation all the time, as you can imagine, that we don't love each other enough. But all I see is love amongst Black people in the midst of despair and antagonism. Now, I will say, I also see self-loathing. I see us embrace anti-Blackness in ourselves. But here's the thing. If there was no anti-Blackness being pushed on us, right, we would have less anti-Blackness within us. Right, you know what I'm saying? That's just the way it goes. And I hate to say it doesn't go the opposite way, right? It's not that we were human and then we were made Black, which meant we were less than the white, right? That was a construction. That was something that was created in order to create this thing that we are now in, where we even need a Black pride. Because the truth of the matter is, we really shouldn't need a Black pride, right? So some of what you're saying, I agree with. We gotta love. That's the most radical act that we can have. But we also can't let white folks off the hook to understand that they participate in a long legacy of anti-Blackness that, unfortunately, when we were slaves, we couldn't fight against.
Right.
I mean, we did fight against it, but we couldn't fully fight because the laws made it such where it was legal. Right?
But do you believe this? Like, with there being so much, and I'll just say it, Black on Black animosity toward each other, and especially in the LGBT community, because there's a lot of it. And the exposure to it is limited to whatever lens or eyes that you're looking through. But it's extreme. And until we can,
because you're in it, right? Because you're in it. Because we're in it. We're in a community, so of course we see it at a heightened degree. But when I'm in white communities, baby, I'd be like, they don't love each other.
Right, and see, the thing is, unfortunately, we treat people how to treat us. You know what I mean? And so I have white counterparts who I don't even look at the fact that they're white. I internalize the fact that they're white and all of that, and they probably, as long as they don't cross that river. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're fine. But I just think there has to be a coming together of ourselves first before we can present anything positive to the world in terms of a community. And I'm speaking exclusively for St. Louis. Yeah. You know, I don't speak for I speak for our city. Yeah. Because I've been such a part of it for so long, since I was 13 years old. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm in my 50s now. So it's been consistent across the board. So I've seen like so much, and things have changed from old school, like house music. E-Rise is a house music head. Who loves house music other than our generation? You know what I mean? But this generation now loves rap music and trap music. I don't like that.
But I love trap music, so let me just
and one of the best functions will be a trap music event, and you'll have tons of people over there. Then it'll just be me, E-Rise, and about 5 other old heads in the house music set. You know what I'm saying?
House music all night long, dude. House music.
But see, house music is not trap music, just so we're clear. To be clear.
Hey, so let me say this. I think that what's really beautiful is that, you know, activists activate, right? And part of what you're talking about is all of you all have activated, right, something in St. Louis that places you in this panel, but also places you in this world, right? You are still alive because you have activated something, manifested something that is beyond description, right? That is not able to be measured, right? Yeah. And what I want to say is, I think we all go in and out of our activation and our recognition of the greatness of who we are. And what Black Pride has always been is the process of seeking, right, the greatness of Blackness, right? It is great, right? We know being Black is great. We are a great people, but we want to emphasize that, and we want to activate that in the young people and in ourselves. And so I think we could. What I want to say is that I think that we can really begin to think differently about our history in terms of Black Pride. If we really begin to always push the narrative, right? Like, and control the narrative even, right? And when I say control the narrative, I mean everybody wants to talk about how fractured our community is. But the reality is, I'm gonna go back to it. There is a Black Pride that is happening. It's just not necessarily happening in the places where we want them to, right? And my question is, how do we get the big Black Pride, sure, or how do we get different spurts, right? And how can we be satisfied with it?
Jeffrey, we need money, and that let me say this. That more than anything, because if we had money and the resources that the General Pride had to build stages, because I'm an entertainment person, I know the dynamic of that. If we had money, because as I said in the beginning, Black Pride had this much, but we made this much happen.
Yeah.
But we had this much. And I always wondered and I always prayed, if we had the budget,
yes,
there was something that we could do that could bring everybody together. Not only that, it would galvanize white people to understand that we have a culture that is culturally different. Now, I can say this. I have enjoyed some of the main prides. Surprisingly, I've had a blast at them. But what made me enjoy it was seeing so many people together and seeing all of these structures of grandeur for gay people.
yeah,
You know, there would be straight passersby looking like, oh my God, I got to go over there. Oh my God, child, they having a blast over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know what that draws attention and interest. Even if you weren't interested in it at first, you are inquisitive about what's going on here. But we need money to make that happen. And if we had the money,
our audience hears that. Black Pride needs money. It needs to be resourced.
And it has to, and the money has to be curated, and it has to be managed by someone who knows what they're doing, you know, to place it where, because I believe if we were able to afford the right couple of celebrities here for a Black Pride function, it would change the course of this city. I'm not talking about the other cities. And I'm not talking about Jennifer Holliday. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Martha Wash. I'm talking about the people of today.
Yeah, maybe Jennifer
Hudson. That we all can enjoy. And you know what I'm saying? Because we always want to bring Martha, and I love those. Those are my generation girls. I love them. But these young people don't want to see that.
Yeah.
It definitely will, because I mean, this is the day and age of personality, you know, and that is ultimately what is going to, you know, sell is personality. And so bringing you want to bring where the people are, you bring a relevant celebrity. Exactly. And there you got them, because that's where we are.
And you have the audience of even us old heads. We're going to say, okay, well, let me see. I mean, it's something about her I like. It's something. It's something.
Yeah.
But we just need the money.
Yeah. I think
you guys.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, and I know we about to run out of time again. So I'm gonna say this real quick. My beef, if I had a beef with the Black LGBT community, it would be, and this is through my work with HIV/AIDS and trying to provide resources and even working with Black Pride, is that there are people, and I know some of these people, I'm not gonna name names, there are people who are well off in the city of St. Louis, Black, gay, lesbian people who don't come out. I'm not even asking them to come out. I'm just saying, you know what the issues are. Give a little bit. You know, write a check, have a fundraiser. You know, but they and everybody has the right. That's why we're in America. You can live.
They do. And I wanted to add. See, when like the comment was made about we need to love ourselves or this or that. This is what loving ourselves looks like, because sometimes you have that money, but you don't want it to go to us.
Right.
You know, you want it to go to them. And so, you know, you know, when we talk about loving ourselves, it comes from all different places. I really don't feel that there has to be a demand on the measure that we show of self-love to prove our own worth.
Right.
Especially when our worth has been deemed less than by those outside of us. That's like putting a foot on our neck and then asking us to rise up.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, so you know, sometimes I see that as much. If you are loving in and of yourself, that comes in different forms, and one of those can be pouring back into your own community and not, you know, those of others. So I just wanted to add.
Answer me this: were they who are they afraid? Are they afraid to give to a particular organization for fear of their, you know, them being associated with it?
I don't even think it's so much.
I'm pissed off now.
But no, I don't even think
I'm
it's
a
so
mad black gay. Because I didn't know they were here. Where
Yeah.
are they?
See, you go looking for things, you find it.
But
Oh man.
I don't even think it's so much fear as it is. It's just not a priority.
Yeah.
It's just not something they even thought about. It's not even in their mind, that this is something I should be doing. They hear the news reports. They know what statistics are. They hear about the trans violence that happens to Black trans people in our city. But it's just they're that.
Now tell me this, Rights. Are they people with a couple of $100s, or are they philanthropists?
No, I'm talking about not only folks who have money. I'm talking about people who have something else that we take for granted. Power.
Yeah.
They have influence. They can influence policy. We talk about making change in the community, policy issues. Like Dr. Jeff talked about those social determinants. They could have an impact on some of those.
Well, let's remember this is not ahistorical though. Like we know that the history of Black queer communities has been, even you think back to the Harlem Renaissance, right? There had to be some incentive for connecting with the production of some of the work, right? We just got a Romance in Marseille, a book by Claude McKay, just came out this year in 2020 that was written in 1935, I think, right? But that book couldn't come into fruition because it didn't have sponsorship. It didn't have anybody who said, this is necessary, important, right? So we got to figure out how to get this incentives. But I want to ask last question. You all have been great. Thank you so much for giving your time to this this event and for sharing so many stories and giving us your heart. And someone asked the question, what is one story or lesson from Black LGBTQ history in St. Louis that you would like to pass down to future generations? What keeps you going? What keeps you moving? Something that happened to you, something that a person, give it to me and give me I'm giving you a moment to think about it and give it to me in 45 seconds. So, what of St. Louis just keeps you going and keeps you having the kind of expression of Black pride that each of you all shows so well?
I would say for me, it's the intergenerationality. Older people showed me the way, and I still talk to some of them, so they're still leading me. I respect my elders. It's the elders.
Right.
I think I was gonna say for me, I think if you want to say not a lesson, but just things to pass down in history, I just remember coming up during the time of great Black gay clubs, great, so 747. This is just something that, I would want to pass down because we don't have anything like that anymore. And that was truly a special time. It was, special for me knowing where can I go, that speaks to me. That speaks to me as an African-American lesbian. And so if, like Eri said, talking to elders, I'm not an elder. I'll punch you in the face. You come down and play. But I'm not an elder. But talking to people about their past experiences, of nightlife and club life, that's really a great history lesson in itself.
And for me, for several years prior to the establishment of Black Pride, I used to give a program called the Black Achievers Awards, and it went on. You guys remember? It went on for like 7 years, and it was the one time that every facet of the Black community came together. And you know why? Because we were able to award and appreciate people for what they have done. And what I applaud about this new Black Pride is that award ceremony. Nothing fills your heart with much more gratitude than being appreciated and shown appreciation. But even during like the Black Achievers Awards that Shayla Simpson and I did for several years, even at the Black Rep Theater, it was a time that I included everybody. Everybody was a part of it. Do you remember that, Dr. Maxey, at all? The Black Achievers Awards? Everybody was a part of it. And it's not until we start coming together to publicly appreciate one another and show admiration for what we've accomplished in our own individual lives and individual aspects of us being gay, because everybody is not in the same aspect of gayness. I don't believe that. I'm in a different aspect, you're in a different aspect, but there's one at least common ground that we can all come together, and that is to be appreciated and shown appreciation. That's what I want to pass down. Let's start appreciating one another and showing it publicly. I always tell my children, you know, as a mother of the female impersonation community, we praise in public and we punish in private.
And so I want to praise each and every one of you all for making history in your own way. There will be annals of history that will have your names on it in St. Louis as being a part of it. Erise, you know your name is already in the history books of the
My name's in the book.
Yeah, I mean, my answer to the question was, the question was to everybody. My answer to the question was, Erise Williams, when I first came here, was such a figure, and so humble and so sweet and kind.
Oh yeah,
you were, and I was inspired to join this community partially because of the work that you were doing that told me that St. Louis wasn't just any old place, right? I think it was Shanti Parikh who introduced me and you. But all of you all have just shown us today that you are a wellspring of history inside of yourselves, but you're also making history in every way possible. And so I just want to say thank you. And I'm sure that everyone who attended and the attendees here would also thank you. And I will hand it back over to Emily.
Yeah, I want to say thank you as well. Thank you to all of you on the panel for sharing not only your time, but as Jeffrey said, your hearts and being so candid with us tonight. Really appreciate that and all of your perspectives. Appreciate everybody who tuned in. We do have 2 to 3 STL History Live programs every week, so be sure to check that lineup. It's mohistory.org. You can look under the events there or under the events on our Missouri History Museum Facebook page. So definitely hope to see you again soon. And thanks again to all of our panelists. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Good to see you.
Bye.